I'd like to welcome everybody to the sixth day of the session, Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. I'd like to welcome Reverend Rick Veit of St. Mark's Episcopal Church to do the daily prayer. Please join me and rise. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, roll call.
Good morning. This is roll call for the sixth day, January 17th, 2023. Alamand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clouston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Excused? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrop? Oakley? Obermueller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strzok? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers? 61 present, 1 excused.
All right, thank you, and thank you for reminding me of the proper order. So I'll start over. I'd like to welcome Reverend Rick Veit of St. Mark's Episcopal Church to do our daily prayer. Please rise.
I'd like to offer you a collect or a prayer for state government today. Let us pray. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send down upon those who hold office in this state, especially this House of Representatives, the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people, especially those here in Wyoming. For it is in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Kite. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. House will please come to order. I wanted to do just a quick reminder to folks before I forget, and then I'll do privileges of the floor. We had a real full lobby out there of lobbyists this morning, which is great, right? Those are the advocates for the state of Wyoming. I just wanted to remind all new members, us older members are more seasoned in that. You know, when a lobbyist asks you how you're going to vote on a bill, make sure you read the bill before you answer that. And then probably don't go back on your word if you give your word. I would encourage you to say, I haven't read that bill yet, or I'm thinking about it, and if you're strong aye or strong no, that's fine. But always be remindful. I guess I'm reminding you that that's your word you're giving when you tell somebody what you're going to do. And just be careful of that. So with that, Chairman Burkhart, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the 67th, we have some people with us today, and I'd like you, after I give you their names, to welcome them to the House. We have the leadership team from 4-H for the state of Wyoming here. And if they would stand as I call their name, and they're in the back gallery, we have Allison Morrison, Bethany Heward, and Allison is from Powell. Bethany's from Shirley Basin.
Let's
You
wait
can
till
wait.
the end. Let's
You
wait
can
till
wait.
the end and get them all.
Wyatt
Yeah.
Griffin from Pinedale, Shiloh French from Rollins, Josie Mayers from Glen Rock, and their advisors, Warren Crawford from Laramie, Kylie Matthews from Cheyenne, and Stacy Buckholz, Platte County educator. If you'd help me welcome them to the House.
Hey! Thank you. Thank you, 4-H leaders, for coming. When they came into my office earlier, I looked at them, I told her, you're now leaders, right? And so think about years down the road, maybe you take these seats we have, because 4-H is such a great program and such a good way to educate youth. So thank you for coming. We have a special event today. This morning, we are joined by Mrs. Wyoming 2023, Charlene Jones. Ms. Jones is an author, advocate, and a life coach who resides in Casper, Wyoming with her husband. The platform she is promoting during her reign as Mrs. Wyoming is being a champion for empowering people, particularly women and children who have emerged from abusive relationships. Fellow representatives, please help me welcome Mrs. Wyoming to the House.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mrs. Jones, would you like privilege of the floor?
Yes, thank you, sir. So the Wyoming legislature has always advocated for women. And as a woman and as someone who has experienced familial violence, I appreciate all the hard work that you've done. So I'm here to edify you. And I'm going to read from my notes. The Wyoming legislature has worked together to create and to protect the innocent, reprimand the guilty, and rehabilitate those who genuinely want it. Women like me who have experienced familial violence in many forms and emerged like a phoenix from the ashes of the relationships that were meant to destroy them. This state has been a refuge for those kind of women. We appreciate all the work, all the hard work that you've done in the past, that you're doing now, and that you're going to be doing in this session. And From the very bottom of my heart, I want to thank you on behalf of women who have suffered with familial abuse, with our children who recover from these kind of relationships, from our teens who experience dating violence. We want to thank you for the work that you're doing. That's all I have.
Hey! Just stay. Oh, stay. Thank you for joining us today. We wish you luck as you represent the Cowboy State in March at the United States of America's National Pageant in Las Vegas, and I just want to shake your hand. All right, thank you. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of January 16th, 2023 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Ward and Chestick.
So I'd also like to recognize the Doctor of the Day, and it's a return of Dr. Shamber from Sheridan. So if you guys could please welcome him again. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor, for spending time with us. Next, I'm going here. We're at that order of business of introduction, reading, and reference of bills. Oh, I missed one. See, I missed it again. Messages from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, message number 7. This is to inform you that the Senate has adopted the temporary state Senate and joint rules of the 66th Wyoming State Legislature as the permanent Senate and joint rules of the 67th Legislature General Session with the following amendments. Senate Rule 1 adopted, Senate Rule 2 adopted, Senate Rule 4 adopted, Joint Rule 1 adopted, Joint Rule 2 adopted. Message 108. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 2, Wyoming Telecommunications Act, sunset date, ayes 21, noes 10. Message 109. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 5, Medical Malpractice Statutory Update, ayes 30, noes 1. Message 110. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 6, Insurance Rebating Modernization, ayes 31. Message 111. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 16, State Employee Moving Expenses, ayes 22, noes 9. Message 112. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 19, Highway Safety, Child Restraints, ayes 30, noes 1. Message 113. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 20, Driver's License and ID Card Photo Quality, ayes 25, noes 6. Message 114. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 58. Sutton Archaeological Site Administration. Ayes 26, noes 5. Message 115. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 59. State Parks Account, Agency Expenditure Authority. Ayes 23, noes 8. Message 116. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 77. Public Works Apprenticeship Programs, repeal. Ayes 31. Message 117. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 78. Apprenticeship and Job Training Promotion in Schools. Ayes 31. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
We're at that order of business of introduction, reading, and reference of bills. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 112.
House Bill 112, sponsored by Representative Oakley.
First reading of the bill.
Theft, penalty for fifth or subsequent offense.
House Bill 112 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 128.
House Bill 128, sponsored by Representative Clauston.
First reading of the bill.
Voyeurism within enclosed spaces.
House Bill 128 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 125.
House Bill 125, sponsored by Representative Eklund.
First reading of the bill.
Second Veterans Skilled Nursing Facility.
House Bill 125 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 54.
House Bill 54, sponsored by Representative Summers.
First reading of the bill.
Homestead exemption.
House Bill 54 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 87.
House Bill 87, sponsored by Representative Ward.
First reading of the bill.
Crimes of obscenity, revisions.
House Bill 87 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 98.
House Bill 98, sponsored by Revenue.
First reading of the bill.
Property tax, homeowners exemption.
House Bill 98 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 100.
House Bill 100, sponsored by Representative Jennings.
First reading of the bill.
Acquisition value study.
House Bill 100 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 121.
House Bill 121, sponsored by Representative Lawley.
First reading of the bill.
Property tax deferral program amendments.
House Bill 121 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. The next bill for our consideration is House Joint Resolution 1.
House Joint Resolution 1, sponsored by Revenue.
First reading of the bill.
Residential property taxation amendment.
House Joint Resolution 1 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. The next bill for our consideration is House Joint Resolution 2.
House Joint Resolution 2, sponsored by Representative Summers.
First reading of the bill.
Constitutional amendment, residential property class.
House Joint Resolution 2 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 139.
House Bill 139, sponsored by Representative Yin.
First reading of the bill.
Intimidation of election officials, doxing.
House Bill 139 is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 140.
House Bill 140, sponsored by Representative Zwanitzer Dan.
First reading of the bill.
Mental health care access, collaborative care model.
House Bill 140 is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 114.
House Bill 114, sponsored by Representative Harshman.
First reading of the bill.
Leasing and sale of state lands amendments.
House Bill 114 is referred to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 116.
House Bill 116, sponsored by Representative Allemand,
First reading of the bill.
prohibiting foreign property ownership in Wyoming.
House Bill 116 is referred to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 134.
House Bill 134, sponsored by Representative Nemec,
First reading of the bill.
alcohol sales to licensees.
House Bill 134 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 135.
House Bill 135, sponsored by Representative Sherwood.
First reading of the bill.
Cities and towns, abandoned and nuisance buildings.
House Bill 135 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 120.
House Bill 120, sponsored by Representative Zwanitzer Dan.
First reading of the bill.
Traffic stops, probable cause.
House Bill 120 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 131.
House Bill 131, sponsored by Representative Henderson.
First reading of the bill.
State Loan and Investment Board, Task Force and Study.
House Bill 131 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 136.
House Bill 136, sponsored by Representative Larson Lloyd.
First reading of the bill.
Capital Construction Amendments.
House Bill 136 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 8.
House Bill 8, sponsored by Labor.
First reading of the bill.
Upper Payment Limit Authorization.
House Bill 8 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 127.
House Bill 127, sponsored by Representative Angelos.
First reading of the bill.
Healthcare Facilities and Clergy.
House Bill 127 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. The next bill for our consideration, just a second. So the next bill for our consideration is House Joint Resolution 3.
House Joint Resolution 3, sponsored by Representative Winter.
First reading of the bill.
Wild horses and burros, best management practices.
House Joint Resolution 3 is referred to Committee Number 6, Travel. So ladies and gentlemen of the 67th, you kind of see all of the, basically all the residential property tax bills went out to Committee Number 3, Revenue. I know they're going to have some internal trainings, and so I don't know when the committee will take up all those bills, but they're now out. I hadn't received any for a while. If we receive more, we'll send them that way as well. So with that, reports from standing committees.
House Bill 18, sponsored by Tribal, Missing Persons Alert Systems, an act relating to missing persons alert systems. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred House Bill 18, Missing Persons Alert Systems, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, Hornuck, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward, Yin, Zwanitzer. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman. House Bill 73, sponsored by Representative Stivar. Annexation, vote requirement, an act relating to cities and towns. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 73, Annexation, Vote Requirement. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Olson, Ottman, Wiley. Noes, Representative Yen. Excused, Representative Newsom. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 30, sponsored by Education. Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship Program Amendments, an act relating to the Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship Program. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 30, Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Program Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Brown, Clauston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermuller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman. House Bill 109, sponsored by Representative Summers. Wyoming Works for Tomorrow, an act relating to higher education scholarships and grant programs. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 109, Wyoming Works for Tomorrow, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Brown, Clauston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermuller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman.
Re-referrals. Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to re-refer House Bill 109 and House Bill 30 to your Committee Number 2, Appropriations.
Seeing no objection, House Bills 30 and 109 are re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. With that,
With that, we will begin on second reading. We have 3 bills up for second reading: House Bill 42, House Bill 50, and House Bill 61. We don't have not, at this time, we do not have any amendments on House Bill, any of the bills, so we are at that order of business. Bills, the second reading, the first bill, I gave that, you have to give me a second here to work through the details of getting my script down. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 42.
House Bill 42, sponsored by Transportation, Off-Road Recreational Vehicle Operation, an act relating to motor vehicles.
Any discussion on the bill? No amendments. Having House Bill 42 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, is so ordered. House Bill 50.
House Bill 50, sponsored by Minerals, Solid Waste Cease and Transfer Program Funding, an act relating to the prioritization of municipal solid waste facilities, cease and transfer projects.
House Bill 50 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. House Bill 61.
House Bill 61, sponsored by Minerals, Source Material Associated with Mining Agreement, an act relating to environmental quality.
House Bill 61 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. That finishes up second reading. Moving on to our third reading. We at the order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader moves for consideration of consent list and reads all the bill numbers. So I guess that would be me, unless I've got a stand-in. Speaker Pro Tem.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
the third reading consent list. House Bill 5, voter registry list, voter ID, and absentee ballots. House Bill 16, state land leasing improvements. House Bill 17, state lands, grazing of non-owned livestock. House Bill 29, community college funding, distance education credit hours.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order,
Yes.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. I really hate to do this, but I actually think the two of you need to switch places via rules. I don't think you have the authority to move this consent list, Mr. Chairman.
I think that's, yeah, you need to be up here.
Remember to move.
There's amendments on the state lands one.
Yeah, yeah. They'll have to call that one up there.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I move that the third reading consent list consisting of House Bill 5, House Bill 16, House Bill 17, House Bill 29, and House Bill 39 be moved into the consent list, third reading consent list.
Would anyone like any of the bills removed from the consent list? Oh, do we have an amendment? Okay. And House Bill 16, which has an amendment, will need to be removed from the consent list. Will the reading clerk read the bills on the consent list?
House Bill 5, sponsored by corporations, voter registry list, voter ID, and absentee ballots, an act relating to elections, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 17, sponsored by agriculture, state lands grazing of non-owned livestock, an act relating to state lands, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 29, sponsored by education, community college funding, distance education credit hours, an act relating to community college funding, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 39, sponsored by transportation, verifying the veteran designation on Wyoming driver's license, an act relating to motor vehicles, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the House? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Alaman. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clausen. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Excused. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stith.
Aye.
Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Swanitzer Dan. Swanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Winter. 60 aye, 2 excused. I just have to get there. As for House Bill 5, are there any changes? Are there any changes? $60 aye, 2 excused. As for House Bill 17, are there any changes? Are there any changes? 60 aye, 2 excused. As for House Bill 29, are there any
Regulars right
changes?
here. My script is right behind it.
Jennings? Aye to no. Heiner? Aye to no. Rodriguez Williams? Aye to no. Angelos? Aye to no. Ward? Aye to no. Haroldson? Aye to no. Bear? Aye to no. Strzok? Aye to no. Knapp? Aye to no. Stivar? Aye to no. Slagle? Aye to no. Smith? Aye to no. Henn? Aye to no. Ottman? Aye to no. Hornock? Aye to no. Singh? Aye to no. Ellerman? Aye to no. Burkhart? Aye to no. Tarver? Aye to no. Pendergraft? Aye to no. Locke? Aye to no. Nyman? Aye to no. Brown? Aye to no. Further changes? 37 aye, 23 no, 2 excused. As for House Bill 39, are there any changes? Are there any changes? 60 aye, 2 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bills 5, 17, 29, and 39 have passed the House. We are at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. On regular reading, the first bill for our consideration is House Bill 16. We have amendments.
House Bill 16, sponsored by Agriculture, State Land Leasing Improvements, an act relating to state lands, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 16 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, after the Rules Committee and the ruling by the good speaker, I took, of course, their advice and changed the amendment for third reading, took out the words residential. This amendment really comes to us from our Office of State Lands and the State Land Board.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point?
Well, this bill that was brought to the Joint Ag Committee, we never reviewed any of these parts of the statutes. And I don't believe they're germane to what we researched and what we did. And they do something entirely different. And I'd like to call a Rules Committee to, again, I'm sorry, folks, but. I don't know
Rules
what else
Committee to the
do.
front of the chamber. So let's come back to order. You know, and for the new people and the public that watches, that's a pretty hot mic. You know, we do this a lot on bills and amendments in particular and have this discussion. And I thought the debate, which you never really heard publicly within that Rules Committee, was a very good debate on why the amendment was germane and why the amendment wasn't germane. And really, the Rules Committee was split right down the middle on it. And so ultimately the decision lies to me. And I do not believe that this amendment is germane to the title. And basically, I don't believe that because I don't think that changing the length of the lease is anywhere in the title or anywhere in the bill. So that's why I'm going to rule it as not germane. Chairman Harshman has the option of pulling the amendment back or making a motion to overrule my decision. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully withdraw the amendment, respect your opinion. So, Mr. Chairman and Chief Clerk, I withdraw third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 16. Thank you.
Thank you. Guess we don't have any other amendments, Chief Clerk. All right. House Bill 16 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Elliman. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Houston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom excused. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrop. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez-Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stith. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Swanitzer Dan. Swanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. 60 aye, 2 excused.
House Bill 16, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 16 has passed the House. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker?
Please.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole to consider bills, House Bill 31, House Bill 3, House Bill 47, 62, 12, 55, and 69, and as so may be added or amended.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Representative J.T. Larson. Ho-ho!
The Committee of the Whole will please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 31. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 31, sponsored by Education. BOCES as a local education agencies. An act relating to education. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 31, BOCES as local education agencies. Respectful report, same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Allred, Berger, Brown, Clauston, Lawley, Obermuller, Provenza. Excused, Representatives Andrew, Northrup. Representative Obermuller, Vice Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Northrup?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 31 do pass. I have an amendment. Mr. Chairman, is it your pleasure to work the amendment now, or would you like to do it after the explanation?
After the explanation.
All right. The good representative from House District 56 will have the explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 31. This bill creates a new section within Title 21, which is the BOCES statutes, to do as the title says, authorize BOCES as local education agencies. I will provide working definitions for the terms used in this bill. First of all, BOCES. BOCES stands for Boards of Cooperative Educational Services. These boards are formed by more than one school district to administer and perform a specific service. One example involves placement of kids in residential settings when they are unable to participate in a regular classroom due to extreme learning disabilities. Second, what are local education agencies, or LEAs? LEA is a federal designation that allows the agency to apply for federal grants. School districts are LEAs. This bill provides the legal structure for BOCES to apply for federal grants. Federal money for special education comes as a block grant. The grants that we're talking about in this bill are above and beyond the block grant model. So how are BOCES funded currently? There are two sources: fees charged to school districts by the BOCES for services rendered, and local school district mill levies. This bill addresses the fee issue and provides for federal grant writing as an alternative to fee increases. So those are the working definitions. For further explanation as to the nature of BOCES and why this bill comes to you as a committee bill, I turn further explanation to the good representative from District 49.
Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the good representative from House District, Center of the State, 5, 6, 7, 5. I got it. Thank you. Has explained everything about this and what they're asking for. So all these BOCES, there's many, BOCES 5 and all that. BOCES 5 director, he came to us and what he found out in writing grants that he couldn't write for these grants he provides services for for disabled kids that can't that school districts can't meet their LRE, which is the least restrictive environment. All right. So when he's looking at offsetting costs and not charging up fees, he wanted to write some grants. Well, what they said was the feds and people offering the grants have said, well, you have to be on LRE to get this. So he looked at it, asked for it, and then all the BOCES 5 came to us. Well, if we're going to do this for one, let's just make all the BOCES change the rule that they're all just an LRE. That's all I have. An LEA, a local education agency.
You have heard the motion on standing committee amendment number 1. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Representative or Chairman Northrop?
Can I move the amendment?
Yes.
I move it's not standing, I'm sorry. I move amendment number 1 to House Bill 31, and we'll explain it. Folks, this is just a cleanup. It should have been caught when we were working the bill, and I just need to get it in. If you read it, it just put delete school in a whole bunch of places and slips in the authorized to operate pursuant to Wyoming statute. So it's just a cleanup. It's an easy one. I'd call a question on the amendment.
Question having been called, all those in favor of standing amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Standing committee amendment number 1 has adopted. We are back on the bill. Let's see, question being called, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 31 has passed. Let's see. Okay. Let's see here. All right. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 3. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 3, sponsored by corporations, State Assessment of Independent Power Producers, an act relating to ad valorem taxation. Mr. Speaker, Committee Number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 3, State Assessment of Independent Power Producers, respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 3 do pass. I further move the adoption of the standing committee amendment to House Bill 3, and I will save the explanation of that standing committee amendment until the bill itself has been presented to the body. And for the presentation of the bill, I will turn it over to House District 39 representative from Sweetwater County.
Representative Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My fellow representatives of the House, or of the Honorable 67th, I'd like to present to you House Bill number 3. It's basically pretty straightforward. We're clearing up some ambiguity in differences between how they do the assessments between the state and local officials, the county assessors. It's been a long time practice that the state has done this, but with this ambiguity, this last year, 2023, it actually went into law to where every county had to do their own assessment. That assessment has been in the process right now per county, and then this will bring it back to putting that back in the state's hands and moving forward, which will actually save cost per county. So a long time thing, just clearing up some ambiguity.
Representative Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just as the former chairman of this committee, and it being a committee bill, wanted to offer a little more background for the floor. In 2008, we got our first kind of independent power producers, and we're talking wind energy here primarily. And the department in question has been doing kind of large-scale industrial assessments when it comes to things that are statewide or that cross county lines, airports, railroads, so type of endeavors. They realized here two and a half years ago that even though they'd been doing these assessments, that they necessarily didn't have that statutory authority they thought they had. And so they came to the legislature last year and asked for that statutory authority. That bill went down, and then it got to be a question of, well, we didn't officially give them that statutory authority, so it fell back to the counties. And so the testimony was our department has the expertise to be doing these assessments. Currently, because the bill didn't pass last year, there's no official statute for them to do that, so it fell back to the local assessor. I think there are 8 counties these projects are in. This bill would then reestablish kind of long-held practice that the department does cover these assessments. And you'll see in the amendments forthcoming, it's just the will of this body when those assessments should start if the bill passes, and we'll have that discussion on the standing committee amendment and the upcoming amendment after that. But just a little bit more background for the body.
Mr. Chair, the
Representative Wiley.
Thank you. The representative from District 43, thank you very much that, that this was a previous issue. I would just like to say that the state already does assessments with other industries and commodities. This is just pertaining to the independent power producers. So it's not like it's anything out of the norm or that the state doesn't handle already. Thank you.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, or members of the body, I think that we need to step back and really take a look at this, because I don't think that this is as simple as, and the ramifications of this are pretty significant. So the good brainer of the bill says that this is just clearing up a simple ambiguity. There is no ambiguity. Counties have the right to assess in their statute in 3913 are given the authority and the responsibility to appraise facilities within their county. The ambiguity existed because the state was doing it. They come back and said, hey, I don't think we have the authority to do this, which was correct. Now, the other important component of this is when you look at the bill and you look at the, on page 2, on starting line 6, it says property of independent power producers operating facilities for generation and transmission of electricity for wholesale. This wholesale thing to me is a big deal. So if we look at utilities where the state does, so interstate, where the PSC is setting rates and they're going across multiple states, multiple counties, and the state comes in and appraises the value of their assets as it goes across counties and goes through the state. If you look at natural gas, it's the same thing. It's a utility. They appraise the value of all of that. But throughout Wyoming, we have natural gas processors. We could call them independent power producers who are selling natural gas to a utility that is managed, that is regulated by the PSC to then deliver that commodity to that. But for those in all around the state, in your county where you have these natural gas producers, the counties assess those gas plants, those gas processing facilities, hundreds of millions of dollars of assets that they're appraising. So now we have the same independent power producers, just the commodity is different. They're now wholesaling it, just like the natural gas producers are. They're wholesaling it to a public utility, and they sell it at the price they can get. If those independent power producers, be it wind, be it solar, are located within the county should have the right, by virtue of the statute, to appraise that. That, I think, is very clear in the statute. And so when we say that we put this burden on the counties, if you talk to your county's assessors, they're not telling you it was a burden placed on them. They're telling you it was a right that was that's trying to be taken away from them. And their concern is that when they try to get the information from the state, there's a confidentiality component of it. So they can request what the appraised value is, but they don't get to participate, even though it solely impacts their county. They don't get any say or can ask any questions. There is some questions. Can the counties, do they have the capacity to do this? No, they've only been doing it since Moses left Omaha. So I just don't think that, and they contracted this last year with a third-party appraiser, which
the state does sometimes as well, provided the appraisal. There is, and they can do that moving forward. The state, there is some argument that says, well, you could see if I was an independent power producer and I had a wind farm in your county and my county separately, the appraised value of those might be different. Yeah, that's right. I think that's no different than if you were a natural gas producer, your facilities might be appraised differently county to county. I think that we really should leave this as it is in statutes, allow the counties to assess that. If the independent power producers, who are not a utility, who are just selling a commodity on an open market at the value they can get, if they have an argument, there's a process to argue that back. Our oil and gas companies and our mining companies have been doing that for years with the counties. And so I would really urge you to resist this and leave the authority to do appraisal in the authority where it belongs within the counties.
Mr. Chair, Representative Wiley. To address the good representative from where the green grass grows, I would like to touch on a few different things. So the first, I would like to say to everybody that this is an additional cost to each county, and within their offices, under testimony through the committee, they expressed to us that they have to hire an outside analytical firm to do this. And what this could do is introduce deflection and consistency. So annually, year to year, you could have these peaks and these lows, which is not good for assessments on the state level, privately, anywhere across the board there. Another thing I'd like to say, this is not tied to natural gas. This is independent power producers, largely wind farms, stuff like that. And I would also like to touch base on that the state already does these assessments to several different commodities. And in most cases, the counties do not advocate for control over the assessment. They will let the state do that because it is an additional cost and it's a lot more work to the county. Thank you.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I sat on the committee as we discussed this, and I wanted to kind of throw some ideas out there. When this was found a couple years ago, and the legislature said, hey, we better bring this into codified law and we better take care of this and eliminate the loophole. When that bill came forward, one of the big concerns that our county assessors had were the fact that they really had no transparency. They didn't know the process by which the state was getting this assessment, and they felt like they were out of the loop. So if you go to your bill on page 2, line 10, there's going to be some added language because of that concern. And it says there under Romanet R, or the letter R, the department shall, upon written request, provide information related to the valuation and assessment of property under WS 39-13-102MXI to the county assessor of the county where the property is located for the purpose of reviewing the valuation or information used in the valuation. So we open the door to say, you can see what the value is, we can see how we got to that value, and that put the power back into the hands, so to speak, of our county assessors to be able to be involved in the process. As we just heard, the county assessors are currently, they are hiring a third-party entity, out-of-state entity, to come into our state to assess these facilities. So that's more taxpayers' dollars that are being spent just to get the assessment when we already have in-house assessment ability on the state level. So really, in essence, the state will then fulfill the role of the third-party assessor. And so that is important. The other thing that you need to realize, and granted, it's not common, it's not like there's a ton of this, but there are some examples of wind farms that spread across county lines. And so then we've got one farm being assessed by 2 different counties, potentially at 2 different rates, and it's So the industry is asking us, they're asking the legislature, hey, give us some solid footing, as this is a movement that is coming out, and this we're not here to talk policy on wind or no wind, but the reality is there are businesses that are wanting to bring wind farms into this state, and they want to know that the tax structure is stable and that they actually can get an idea that it's going to be held and handled in the same way. So I think it's really important to understand that the concerns that came forward last year from the assessors, I believe, have been addressed in the fact that there is that transparency aspect. And instead of paying a third-party entity in the state, let's use our own department to take care of that and equalize that out. Thank you.
Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the good representative from District 54 said we need to slow down and really look at this. And based on some of the comments that have been made, I really want to back it up so that everyone here has at least the understanding of the testimony that we received in the committee. The first thing that's really important is that what we're talking about are the independent power producers, and we're talking about their assessment. And for over a decade, the state of Wyoming has performed those assessments. So if anything's being taken away, it would be the opposite. If this bill didn't pass, you're taking away from the state department that oversees our revenue and does these assessments what they've been doing for over a decade. This bill, all it does is clarify in statute that you can do what you've already been doing for a decade, department that oversees our revenue. So that's really important. It was also said that counties have the right to assess, but that's not actually true. The statutes tell us which entities they have the right to assess and which they do not. Our regulated entities, regulated utilities, are assessed by the state. So all we're saying is, hey, you already assess all the regulated utilities, you should assess the independent one too, the independent power producers. And so they did for over a decade. Something was mentioned as to why. So at the end of the day, if you adopt this bill, you're really just keeping in place what we've been doing for over a decade. But the question is, why would you want to do that? There's been some testimony to that already. The industry wants consistency and predictability. If they have to take an assessment from 12 different counties or 23 different counties, they may end up with 12 or 23 different results. That's not the consistency and predictability that business wants. But more importantly, they want what they've already had. Industry's been under the assessment for over a decade. They don't want to turn that on its head. Also, there was some testimony that assessors wouldn't get a say in the process. I don't think that's very accurate either. This bill, trying to reach a compromise that you'll see on page 2, the bottom half of the bill, lines 10 through 22, what that does is allow for the disclosure of the information of the appraisal from the department that oversees your revenue to the assessors so that they have the information to participate in the process. And the testimony that we heard is that there is an initial period of time where they can sit down at the table just like anyone involved in the assessment and give their thoughts. So while they may not have a right of appeal because they don't have standing to have that, they do have a right of access through the process. I also think this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. There's only been one appeal by a taxpayer in the history of these assessments, one appeal. That means that our department that oversees your revenue has been doing a really good, solid job getting fair appraisals through. So why would we want to turn that on its head? So with that, I would encourage you to move this bill forward. And what I'd like to do is take up the standing committee amendment, since we've been at this for a while, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Standing committee amendment, all it does is address the enactment date. So this act is effective January 1, 2024. That's what the amendment does. Without it, it goes into place January 1st, 2023. Why are we pushing it out a year? Because on January 1, the assessors found out that, what we haven't been doing for the last decade, we have to do now. So apparently we've heard some testimony from some assessors that they've already started the process with some independent power companies. So it's kind of hard to stop that midway so this bill says, hey, we'll just draw a clear line in the sand. That's January 1st, 2024. Counties will do some assessments in 2023 because you already started the process, but in 2024, it'll be back to what we've been doing for the last decade, the Department of Revenue. You'll see another amendment to decide whether that should be 2023. I don't think your committee has a huge preference either way. And the Department of Revenue doesn't have a huge preference either way. The Department of Revenue's been doing this, so they've already testified to us, hey, we can internally do this. You heard testimony that the assessors cannot internally do it, that they must actually hire a company out of the state of Texas to do the assessments and use taxpayer dollars, where the Department of Revenue has already been doing this and does it internally. That's the standing committee amendment, and with that, I'd ask for your adoption of the amendment. Question on the amendment?
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Representative Zwanitzer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so on the amendment, but I'll talk a little bit about the committee, the whole amendment as well, because they're both related to the bill and these assessments. So if the bill passes, your interim committee, because this was a bill the committee worked on all 3 interim meetings, our intent from the former committee was to make this effective immediately, to give it back to the department, to be able to do these for this year in 2023. The testimony that we heard in committee, or that the Corporations Committee heard, was that because of the fiscal year cycle and this had not become law yet, your assessors apparently already have entered into some contracts and have arguably prematurely been assessing some of these facilities, even though they knew this bill was coming forward. So you can imagine I have some thoughts on that. So the question before you is, do we keep it at 2024 and let the assessors, if this bill pass, continue to do the assessment? This would be their first year of doing it for 1 year, and then turning back over to the department in 2024, or the committee of the whole amendment would say the bill's effective immediately and the department will use the tax year this year and the department will start doing it immediately this year. Arguably, your county's assessors may have some contracts in place with this firm, and I would tell you this firm that does these assessments on behalf of these 8 counties who have these independent power producers, it's a larger contract that does more than just the IPP. It'll do the refinery, the other large industrial properties. So I don't believe you're harming that contract. Me personally, I don't know how they're structured, but I would think, we no longer need this service as part of your multi-layered contract. And so that's really the question before you. Do you let the assessors do it for 8 months or for 1 year and then turn it back to the department? Or do we immediately let the department do it for this tax year?
Representative Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So members, I would ask you to vote yes just on the standing committee amendment, and then you can make the decision on whether it should be 23 or 24 with the committee of the whole amendment. That way, because the committee of the whole amendment actually repeals the standing committee amendment, that should be where the decision is made. With the standing committee amendment, we at least start with a point that we can work on, which is the 2024 point. So I'll ask for your aye vote, and then we can have a more in-depth discussion on what the right date should be with the committee of the whole amendment.
Representative Wiley, did you have anything to say?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would also like to say, fellow representatives, I think this is a good middle ground here, a good compromise, and it'll set a benchmark for the counties to be able to have, proper representation. And another thing is it after
Representative Wiley, can you speak to the amendment?
Yep, to the amendment. Yep. Thank you.
Question being called. All those in favor of standing committee amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Standing committee amendment number 1 has adopted. We are back on the bill. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a question. The bill talks about confidentiality and that the assessment must be kept confidential. My question is, will the information be provided to the property owner? Because it seems to me the property owner or the business here would have a right to know what went into this assessment. It seems like how the bill reads that it can't be shared with the property owner, and that's my question.
Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In kind of dovetailing on with the last question, this section of the bill adds independent power producers to a whole list of other sectors, including within that statute, including pipelines, electrical companies, mines, railroads, public utilities, airline companies, lease properties, et cetera. So you're adding these independent power producers to that entire list. Along with that confidentiality, does this confidentiality clause, which is most of the bill, add the confidentiality to all of those other sections as well? Or are we just talking independent power producers? And has that been standard practice? Thank you.
Representative Wiley.
Yeah, Chair, to address that question, no. And like I said, this is an ambiguity. It's been a long-term practice of the state to do these appraisals. That list that you were talking about is just other commodities and different industries that the state already conducts assessments on. Thank you.
Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My question is, it's my understanding that the association that represents county assessors is against this bill, and I guess I'm curious to hear from the committee what the testimony was to the committee about this. I know in my county that when one of our independent power producers asked for planning and zoning's permission to build its solar farm, it estimated it would pay $17 million a year in tax. And then state does the appraisal, and then what they actually pay in tax is about $4 million. So it came in much less than at least what the company had represented to the local agency. So my question is, if this is such a good idea, why are the county assessors not in favor?
Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to answer some of these questions. So the first question was from the good representative from District 57 regarding confidentiality, and then from the representative from here in Laramie County, kind of a follow-up on that. So if you look at page 2 of the bill, this R subsection specifically says that the department, that's the department that oversees your revenue, after a written request from the county assessors, must provide the information, et cetera. All information provided under this subsection shall be confidential. So the confidentiality that is being discussed in this section is between the county assessors and the department that oversees your revenue. The actual rate or taxpayer the information is going to flow between the taxpayer and the department that oversees your revenue without any confidentiality. So they're going to have access to all the same information. This is just the information that's being released to the assessor. The reason why confidentiality has to apply there is because they're not a party. They're not a party to it. They don't have that same privity that exists between the Department of Revenue and the actual payer of the taxes. This section, my understanding, to answer the question from the good representative from Laramie County, my understanding of this confidentiality section that it would apply to all taxpayers, that it wouldn't just apply to the independent power producers. That's my reading of the statute. And then lastly, to answer the question from the good speaker pro tem, why do assessors care? Because they're assessors. Their job is to assess. They want to assess. Ultimately, they want to assess the property that resides within their counties. You can't, to me, that's a completely reasonable position. But for over a decade, the state's already been providing these assessments and can provide the assessments. For you to make the policy choice on who should assess, I think you should look at 3 things. 1, who's been doing it? The state for over a decade. Number 2, who can do it internally without using taxpayer dollars to hire in these third-party companies? The state. And what's the way that's going to create the most consistency and predictability across 23 counties is to have one central entity performing the assessment. So for me, those are the 3 policy reasons on why you would rest it with the state over the assessors.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that this is really kind of a fun discussion. I think it's interesting that we'll be having a supplemental budget. We just had a standard budget conversation, and in that budget, the Department of Revenue has requests, and we fund full-time employees in that. I think with taxpayer dollars to go out and do appraisals. So to say that the state doesn't do this without any taxpayer dollars is just flawed. That's not accurate. Now the counties are contracting out, and the argument that I'm hearing here today is, you know, the counties have just soiled the bed because they've gone outside and brought in a third party that's not a Wyoming appraiser to do these appraisals. I think the argument on that is, at least finally, the jurisdiction who has the authority statutorily is able to exercise that authority and get the evaluations done rather than having Big Brother the state doing it. Now, the fact that the state has been doing it for decades doesn't make it right. And so to say, just because they've been doing it, now we should adopt it and continue on with that process. I think that's a flawed policy as well. The good chairman of corporations made really, what I think is an important point, where he says that the state now does the appraisal for all regulated utilities. That is absolutely right, and they should. These independent power producers are not a regulated utility. They are me and this guy deciding to build a wind farm, and then we think that we can sell this electricity to a producer, and we get to dictate the price. It's not a public utility. And so I think, and the statute makes it very clear that if those assets are within the county, or largely within the county, it's the county's responsibility. There was, I think we also have to be, it's interesting that we'd say that the counties perhaps have prematurely entered into a contract for an auditing firm. No, the counties are just following statute that says they have the authority to do that. And so I think, understanding that authority, they should be able to go ahead and do that. And I also think that there is if it costs more for the counties to do it, it's the counties' concern that the state has consistently under-evaluated these assets. And they feel that the extra cost for doing the assessment will be more than probably made up with the increased value determined by their assessment. So the bottom line for me here is that when we get into these conversations, who really should have this, who has the statutory authority? Right now it's with the counties. Why would we take that away from them? And why then would we want the state to do the assessment on a non-regulatory entity, such as somebody producing natural gas or an independent power producer? Thank you.
Representative Chestek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm on the bill and in favor of the bill. I'm typically a person who likes local control. On the lower level, you can push the decisions to, it's good. But there are some things that you need more uniformity on. I think this is one of them. I am persuaded by the arguments that the disparities between counties that might arise if we allow the county assessors to do these independently could distort the market in a way that I think is potentially troublesome. So if you're an independent power producer and you have a choice of where to put up a wind farm, and you see in one county, historically, the assessments for the turbines is lower than it is in another county, that creates an incentive to go to the other county, and you're putting what I think is an irrelevant decision as to where to site your power plants going for the lower taxes is going to be a powerful incentive and creates a competition between counties that I think is unhealthy. So I am very much in favor of having the state take over this and create more uniformity in how these things, because the turbines are basically the same thing wherever you put them, and there shouldn't be any local variation in the value of them because they're producing energy in the same way from the same source. I think that uniformity across the state is useful, and I'm in favor of the bill. Thank you.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our county, I think the point is exactly what the Speaker Pro Tem said, was the predictions are not coming out with what the valuations are right now, and there is not an avenue for our assessors to cross-reference. So that's what the big issue is in our area.
Representative Wiley.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I want to come back and touch on some of these concerns. And nobody likes soiled sheets, but if we're not careful, boy, we can step in it. So we just need to touch back to a couple of these things. Now, I think it's very important for us to know the difference between these assessments and projections. If a county goes into an agreement based upon a set of projections for a project or what it could possibly yield, that's different than doing an assessment once you have the project in place and built. Another thing I want to go back to is with the state, this is not additional funding, this is not additional positions, this is something that the state has already been doing for the last decade. The money, once it goes through the assessor's department with the state, it doesn't stay with the state, it goes straight to the separate counties. So there is no overhold of money when it goes through there. Thank you.
Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would like to speak on that also, the difference in an industrial siting projection and actual assessment. In any project, when a company comes in, they tell you, you're going to receive lots of taxes from us. And the projections typically are high. In testimony, we found that the methodology that the assessors would use would be the same as the state. So the fact that they view these to be undervalued from industrial siting to actual assessment, I think is a moot point.
Representative Zwanitzer.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 points that haven't been brought up, or at least haven't been elucidated clearly. It's not that the department is not doing this. They are still doing this for all of your regulated utilities. So all of the regulated utilities that are generating electricity, the department's still assessing them. So the danger is having your county assessors assess an independent power producer basically doing the same production of electricity at 8 different rates in these 8 different counties from what the Department of Revenue is doing for our regulated utilities, right? The Department of Revenue internally would know what they're regulating and what they're assessing all of our current electric utilities, and they'd be able to use those same judgments and assessment on what each one of these independent power producers are generating and how they should be assessed. So it's not any additional positions. The department's already doing this for all the public utilities. Second, and it hasn't been brought up yet, is this question of liability. So what if you contest your tax assessment, right? Would you rather have, one of these large-scale independent power producers, and you're going to challenge that if you're the industry? It's a little scarier probably to challenge the state with the resources of the state than challenge your local county assessor and having them, bear the burden, and they contract this cost out again with this company in Texas to, kind of be on retainer as well for if anybody does contest their tax thing. So it just makes more sense to me in case of litigation, in the case of kind of uniformity across the board with the resources we have in place to ensure that the department, treats everybody fairly in the state, public or independent power producer. And because there's nobody else at the mic, I'd move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 at this time. And again, this takes the date back to basically this year of 2023. And so looking through the department, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman, you didn't give me authority, but let me make sure I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1.
Representative Larson Lloyd, did you have anything to add before we move to the amendment?
Indeed, I do, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I don't know, I don't know about the assessors in your county, but my county assessor is not scared of anything. And if we have some very large energy producing assets in our county that challenge taxes and assessments on a regular basis. And so I think the previous comment about is this going to put the eternal trembles on your county if somebody challenges that? And I just don't think that's fair. I think they're used to it now. And they have a good process in place to take care of that. I think it's also important to understand that I won't go down that rabbit hole. I'll say adieu. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and appreciate having this conversation. It's been a good one.
Representative Wiley.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I would just like to touch on that. In the past decade, there's been one that didn't agree with the assessment. I just want everybody to remember that. Thank you.
Representative Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now I'd like to move committee of the whole amendment number 1, if that's okay. And
We are now on committee of the whole amendment number 1. Representative Zwanitzer, is there any discussion on the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is the same discussion if whether or not you want the department to do it for this tax year or you want your assessors to do it for 1 year if this bill passes and then be turned back over to the department. We have had a couple of these bills in the revenue world before where I don't want you to think we're being retroactive. Even though the bill's effective immediately, you can say it's this tax year as of January 1st. That would give the department enough time to assess these facilities. My fear is if we allow the assessors to do it for 1 year and this bill passes, then we come back in 2024 and the state does it, and you have industry saying, hey, the state assessed us at one level, or county assessors assessed us at a different level, and that causes havoc and perhaps people challenging their assessments. So I just think it's cleaner if we're making this step long-term to immediately make the step and not cause the complications of having the assessors do it for 1 year and then state taking it back over.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So the reason that the committee moved forward with the 2024 date, and the reason, so I was on the committee and I proposed it, was because the assessors during their testimony told us they already had the contracts in place because they expected to be assessing these independent power producers. So they put the contracts in place for the assessments for this tax year already at fall of the previous year. And now that the contract's in place, those paid services are already happening. So the assessors are already having those contractors go and assess the independent power producers, which means that one, our counties are already paying for it. So if we switch it back to the Department of Revenue, we're losing costs that we've already incurred. And two, if there are assessment numbers that end up being passed before we pass the bill out, then there will be two numbers. There'll be a number that the county assessor gave to the property owner and a number that the Department of Revenue gives to the property owner after we pass it for the following year. And so the reason that I made the amendment in the committee and that we brought it to you on the floor was to make sure that we don't have those competing numbers, because those can cause conflicts, and that we don't also have our counties all waste money to make a number that will then be in conflict again with the Department of Revenue. So I would ask you to vote down, moving it back to the 2023 tax year.
Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the last speaker. Our county assessors are already beginning this process of evaluating and assessing these properties. To stop them now mid-stride, they're going to expend this money with no value. But I've heard conversation that the valuations may be vastly different by using this other contractor that our counties have already contracted with, and that it may create a difference in property values. Well, maybe we ought to see that difference. If there is a large difference between the state and what the county comes up with, then we can go back and evaluate why, because they have the same sideboards. And if they both come up with very different numbers, let's find out why at that point. Maybe there's something inherently wrong with the way we're doing this process of property evaluation and taxation. So I would encourage the no vote on this amendment. Let the counties go forward with what they're already started. Let's come up with a number, and then we can look at the process and see if we're on the right track as we evaluate these properties. Thank you.
Representative Chestek?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and in favor of the amendment. I'm concerned about inconsistencies. So in the past, we've had the state do the evaluations, and then for a year, we'll have the counties do the evaluations, and then we're going to go back when this becomes effective and take it back to the state again. If there is a very big variance between in that 1 year, if for example, the evaluations come in extremely low, are we creating an incentive for additional appeals in the next year when it goes back up under the state valuation? And the first evidence at the appeal hearing is, well, the county assessor gave us a low value, so that should be the baseline now. So I'm concerned about creating evidence for an appeal in the future and for future going forward. I think having the state continue doing it all the way through is a much safer way, and I'm in favor of the amendment.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Question have been called. All those in favor of the committee of the whole amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. No, or opposed, no? No. Noes have it. Division being called. All those in favor, please rise. All those opposed, please stand. It's more than 15. The amendment fails. We're back on the bill. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Olson's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that the House Bill 3 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. House Bill 3 do pass. The committee of the whole. The next.
The majority floor leaders give a good update. Stop this.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee of the whole begs leave to rise and sit again until 2 p.m.
All those in favor of the majority floor leader's motion to recess until 2, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Okay, we will move on to committee reports. Sorry, announcements.
Privilege of the floor.
Sorry. Representative Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you'll all welcome the chair of the Teton County Commission is here with us today. He also happens to be my husband. So, thanks. And his name is Luther Probst. we'll be at the first part of the fairgrounds celebration this evening. We hope you'll all join us. Thank you.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock to consider House Bill 67, Special License Plate Decals, House Bill 43, Winter Road Closures, and if there's time, House Bill 94, Board of Parole, Wyoming Residency, and House Bill 118, Volunteer Firefighter Pension Funding.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your House Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs Committee will meet in about 15 minutes upon recess to hear 3 bills: House Bill 41, Lightweight Trailers Permanent Registration, House Bill 44, Road and Bridge Construction, Alternative Contracting, and House Bill 45, Peace Officer Retirement and Rehiring, if time permits.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet Wednesday upon noon recess in Capitol Room E003 and online. We'll also going to look at House Bill 34, School Finance Mental Health Services, House Bill 137, Minors Sale and Purchases of Cannabinoid being Prohibited, and House Bill 32, Education Mill Levy Amendments. Thank you.
Chairman Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet tomorrow morning in our normal room to hear 3 bills. House Bill 10, County Officers Bond Amounts. House Bill 15, County Authority to Dissolve Museum Boards. And House Bill 96, Transfer on Death Deed Insurance Coverage.
Chairman Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, will meet today at noon recess to consider 3 bills. House Bill 74, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund. House Bill 76, Licensing Boards Amendments. And if time permits, House Bill 104, Hunting of Predatory Animals Amendments.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you. Your House Appropriations will meet tomorrow at noon to do House Bill 2 and 15.
51.
And 2 and 51 will be in room W15 down on the first floor here. On noon recess today, we'll re-referrals for 4, 14, 11, and 65. And then your joint appropriations will work the CAPCON bill and the ARPA bill on adjournment.
Chairman Harshman. Any other announcements? Okay, we're at recess.